And we were the last generation to kind of be swindled somewhat, because when the Wizard of Oz reveals itself, the window is pulled back and you see the Mechanical Turk. It's so disappointing. The grief that you feel, it's so sad. And you feel for your younger self who believed in the myth that was sold, some of the fairy tale, but we didn't know what we didn't know. And now it's a part of why I speak so candidly and openly, because we do no one any favors by trying to sugarcoat it, and we have to let them know they're smart anyway. They already suspect that it's a transaction. What's in it for them? What's in it for the firm? Right, this is a good match. Let's work together. Let's do this good work until it's not, and then I'll move on.
Welcome to the People in Legal podcast. This is the Law and Beyond show, where we're exploring everything there is in this expanding legal universe. That is law, technology and compliance, education and academia. And I am your host, Chantal McNaught. I'm a PhD researcher and Director of Ethics and AI Practices at 43 Below. And I'm so excited to introduce our special guest today, Mel Storey. Mel Storey is the founder of Counsel Media, host of the Counsel podcast, and your career big sis, ungatekeeping legal careers for lawyers who never had the inside track. She has spent more than 15 years in commercial practice across infrastructure, aviation, telecommunications, and business-to-business technology, and most recently, head of legal across the Australia and Pacific region at a global company before taking what she calls the permanent corporate gap year in 2025. Through her online platforms, Mel has reached more than 50,000 lawyers and law students, and the Counsel podcast is fast approaching 150,000 downloads across 27 countries, now in its 6th season. Mel's also based here in sunny Brisbane, Australia. Thank you so much for joining me on the show, Mel.
Thank you for having me.
Now, this has been really come with self-packaged pep kind of talk. And really, we're getting to the nitty-gritty kind of career conversations around...
I love that. That's what I do.
It's what you do, and you ungatekeep it. You bring the inside track to everyone, and thank you for bringing the inside track to the Law and Beyond show, because on behalf of the listeners, I really want to understand a little bit more about what it's like moving from private practice into in-house corporate, and what do you think that lawyers in private practice most often get wrong about the switch?
So I made that switch when I was 3 years post-admission experience, and I was working at a large major national commercial law firm here in Brisbane. I had done some time in the Sydney office, and I had seen enough to know that the big law was not going to be for me. And then I was introduced to this thing called a secondment, and I went and I worked within one of the firm's clients, sat in their offices, and I was essentially an in-house lawyer for that client, just for a small period of time for a particular project. That's when I realized that in-house was a thing, and that it was so well suited to my style of practice and my personality. Once I had that taste of practice in that way, I couldn't unsee that. I couldn't unfeel that. I felt like in-house was my home. And I went back to the firm after the secondment ended, but I made some pretty quick decisions to start to position myself to be a really great candidate for a junior legal counsel role. And then I made my way in-house. I worked in-house for the next 12 years across a number of different industries, but I really did settle in the business-to-business technology space, and really a global technology and disruptive technology in cloud computing, and then a little bit of AI, agentic AI, distribution of software towards the end. I think that private practice lawyers, if they haven't practiced in-house, really don't know what they're talking about at all, because how can they? You don't really know what you don't know. And if you haven't experienced something or walked a mile in someone else's shoes, it can be really difficult to just assume. But of course, many private practice lawyers will still attempt to, and it's normally from an interesting lens. I often find it tends to be tinted with a sense of, oh, well, that's a little bit of a less than, or, you couldn't hack it in private practice, or it's a bit of a step down. Your skills might atrophy. Yeah, okay, sure. Have fun. Good for you. There's a slight, is it smug? I'm not sure. Is it snobby? I don't know. But it comes from a place of complete ignorance. And honestly, I think that the narrative and the myth pursuers a way of kind of cult-like behaviour to keep people within the firm, because if a lot of juniors knew how practice elsewhere could be, still in the commercial space, but on the client side, you would just continue to lose them at that associate level, and they already have a lot of trouble keeping them anyway. So I fully understand why some of these narratives persist. I didn't mind them because I knew that I had found this big secret for me that worked really well for me, and that the less lawyers that were tempted to try this way of practice, the less competition I had for these really lucrative roles. So that didn't bother me at all. But I do think the cat's out of the bag a little, and next generation is not buying it as much, and they're not drinking the Kool-Aid as much. And also, I don't think that it's played out. I don't think that it's true that it's less than or a step down. It's an entirely different way of practice. You almost can't compare. It's truly like a GP and a specialist. You need to know a little bit about a lot. You need to be resourceful. You need to be able to talk to people from all walks of life. You can never get away from your client. They are literally there next to you in the lunchroom, in the bathroom, in the hallway, asking for a quick question. And that's a skill set that not every private practice lawyer has or wants to develop anyway. That's been the long and fabulous road for me over the last 15 years.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that. There's a lot in that as well to take away, because don't you think that with that a little bit of that smugness that you experienced, that it kind of came from a place of having to defend some of the pain and the challenges of private practice and make that a bit defensible. It's a little bit like the sunken cost bias of, oh, well, like you're going out and leaving this hard work. I'm better because it's hard work and I'm clearly more capable or whatever. But really that sounds a lot like envy. And like, I wish I could do that, but my pride won't let me. Potentially, yeah. And isn't it fantastic that in both sort of senses, where we have corporates who are going, oh wow, this is really good, we can hire lawyers to do the work inside, but at the same time in private practice there are also a lot of those career shifts around what the hazing ritual should look like, and that it shouldn't really look like a hazing ritual.
Absolutely.
That, growing good lawyers doesn't have to mean making them suffer for 2 to 3 years before we get to actually give them the respect that they deserve. So I appreciate you sharing your insight. Oh, and the other thing that actually came out from your story too, that we can get down into a little bit more as we talk about how you're the career big sis, is how your experience told you where you needed to go. And then that was a strength. Like you didn't fold to the social pressures of what you should be doing. Your experience told you where you needed to be, and that in spite of that social pressure, that's what motivated you. And I think that's something I want to drill down a little bit more in, because you've now spent years speaking to lawyers in all different stages of their careers, including high school students. Is that right?
Yeah, especially on TikTok. They're not. I don't think they're supposed to be on there because of the ban, but they're still on there DMing me, asking me about law schools. So,
well, if you want to get ahead, you got to show you can, circumnavigate some of these barriers, right?
Maybe.
And so, What would be really cool to know for the audience is what trends are you seeing right now, about, like, especially, those ones that are asking you about law school, and they're probably asking you around like how AI is
Yes.
impacting careers. So what are you seeing in as far as the trends, and feel free, as much as you can, of course, your conversations are private, with those that you coach and mentor, but if you did have any stories to share.
Many. Of
Yeah.
course, yeah. Many trends. Something very specific but worth mentioning. Postgraduate, a lot of nurses are retraining and going back to law school at the moment. I
Oh,
think it's
wow.
post COVID. I think it's post. They are just done with that industry, that system. I think that there's a lot of them, mainly female, who came up in a different time where maybe they thought they weren't smart enough to go to law school or smart enough to get in, but they've been in. They have seen exactly what it takes to be in the profession that they did chose, and nursing will forever be, I think, just the most exceptional, the exceptional work of caring and helping people that are not always, helping you help them. And I think if you can navigate that system, you can be an exceptional lawyer. So I do think I've seen a trend of, 40-ish to 50-year-old women getting a second lease on life. Maybe kids are out of the home. They're done with the shift work. They've seen the world a bit more. They've seen it and gone, wait a minute, I was sold a bit of a lie about, I couldn't get into law, or I couldn't get into medicine. So I went to, I did to the nursing path, or perhaps they were called to nursing. I don't know. But they're reassessing and they're letting themselves make a new decision with new data. That is such an interesting and unexpected trend. And I'm mentoring quite a number of these later in life law students. So that's worth mentioning. Yes, the AI piece, there's no doubt about it. This is the year that it went mainstream for law, without a doubt. You have been living in this space well beyond, everyone else. I had been dabbling within the last 18 months, and I was in the technology industry, so we saw the wave. And I tend to be an early adopter, evangelist of things anyway. I've got crypto, I've got NFTs, I've got stories to share on all of that. My God, what an interesting time, blockchain and Web3. But it feels like another wave of that, but bigger. And like when the internet came along, or even when electricity came along. And it is without a doubt a technological evolution that is just incredibly well timed. So the students are in a hard place because they're using it in their personal lives. They're being told by practitioners like you and I to stay curious and to learn, because the industry is grappling with it and integrating it quickly. But they're being told by their law schools it's scary and don't use it, and it's fear mongering, and academic misconduct is potential, and they're very scared to be caught out using it, because of course then they might have to say that there's academic misconduct when they go to be admitted.
It's
so
mixed messages,
they
right?
are getting mixed messages, and I think we do them a disservice. I think there are some bright lights of academics that are really taking the lead here, and they're coming from different parts of the sector, but they're the minority. And I do think that the students who are graduating this year and next are just so in the thick of this. They will come into the industry and they will be absolutely fine. But the law students in their first and second years, I think will have the opportunity to have, electives that will really help them level up, but they're still developing them right now. And fundamentally, I think that tertiary education is a little bit behind the eight ball, because it does disrupt the business model. So them themselves are potentially fearful about, well, if it democratizes knowledge, which it does, what's our position here? How do we deal as an entire institution, as an entire sector? Why would someone go to a university if they can also perhaps just do a, short course here, or they can spend a significant amount of time and learn almost everything that's ever been learned? Now, the answer to that is, well, of course, there's so many value adds to going to a university. But if you're just if you're just rolling out the same subject with the same PowerPoint slides and the same assessment year over year, which we know many academics just do, they've been paid well, they've probably been a little lazy, a little complacent, you're going to resist this kind of shift and change. So I think we're seeing it unfold, and there are some students towards the back end of their degrees that are probably missing out just a little bit as the shift happens. But I have unlimited options for them for self-learning, for self-directed learning. And I just would say that they should take it with a grain of salt and continue to use it in an appropriate way, and be interested about the ethical frameworks, the governance questions, the what's unfolding at the moment with legal professional privilege and confidentiality within litigation when we use these LLMs, and how it can be waived, accidentally. There's a case out of the US that I've been looking into this morning. It's all unfolding. We're all learning together, but we have to be curious. It's not going away. And I think that very shortly, not using AI will be akin to not using email or the internet in your practice. Yes, you can. Sure, technically we can still be writing letters. We could technically go to the law library and pull out the Dewey card and have a look, and down we go. But technology is undefeated. Efficiency is undefeated. It's happened. So let's get on and let's make good decisions with it. And if the lawyers trained in the way that we've been trained around ethics and governance principles, morality, philosophy, humanities, if we're not having these conversations about how to best interact with this incredible piece of technology, then I don't know who is. I think we're very well placed to step up to the challenge and lead here, in all walks of life, in academia, yes, but also in government and policy. So, look, what are we? We're June 2026. Every week since probably February, I have struggled to keep up with the developments. Claude for Legal, when it dropped early May, it blew my mind. And I just thought, this can't get better. Then Claude Fable 5, I played around with that for 3 days before it was turned off by the government.
Lucky.
It's absolutely phenomenal. I was at a conference last week. I spoke to a head of VP for the Asia Pacific and Japan region for Lagora. They were in the house. Spot Draft was there. They're all grappling with how to best serve the corporate counsel, but also private practice counsel in integrating all of this new technology. So it's a fascinating time.
Yeah, and it's to add as well to that whole skills issue and getting really prepared for what is to come, is that feeling of discomfort that you get whenever you are learning something new. And there's something to be said about how, and I don't think this is just an Australian kind of problem. I think from education in a lot of different places in the world has been very much around, outcomes, get the qualification, get your piece of paper so you can get that job. Whereas really what AI is really shining a light on is just how much we need to have an attitude of capability building and a lifelong learning, and that constant feeling about being a novice. Now, of course, your perpetual corporate gap year and having that courage to step out of the comfort of being employed and starting your own gig is in of itself that prerequisite continuous learning and appetite for that discomfort of I need to keep on ahead of this. And that's something that's commonly, I'm sure you get that asked a lot as well, because you do a lot of content around the AI skills and lawyers, and like, how do you keep up? Well, you don't aim to keep up, you just keep reading.
Yeah. Totally. I love that lifelong learning. It's exactly the skill, and it's curiosity and it's open-minded. And we don't have to jump all in and change everything immediately, burn it to the ground and start again. But we absolutely shouldn't be saying a flat out no based on fear to anything. If I can just get people to a maybe with a bit of maybe I'll spend an hour or so having a look. And yes, be skeptical. And yes, have a little cynical lens. That's what lawyers do best.
That's totally required because this technology is so convincing. And, you mentioned a US case. There was one where an AI expert in his expert testimony, like a report, had produced a hallucinated citation. It was an expert in AI talking, and it was so meta because it was talking about its propensity to create hallucinated citations.
That's so funny. I love that.
If the experts can be sprung,
yes,
feel a little bit better by, having your skeptical cap on, that is required. But at the same time, you can't rush into it either. And there's a little bit of a self-awareness piece, and this is kind of like my little segue into, I want to talk about the traditional tournament. The tournament of lawyers is something that I've read in my research frolics around how private legal practice, you get the graduate lawyers in, they provide the leverage, the grunt work. Yep. And then the idea is that once they have learnt their piece, then they're able to go up and up, or they go, this ain't for me, I'm going to do something else or go somewhere else. And that's what's really referred to as the tournament of lawyers. So the DMs that you're getting and the coaching work, the career big sis stuff that you do, what are you observing from this up and up new generation, the Gen Z or Gen Zers, as our American people would say? And of course, late millennials, it'd be interesting to see how you're seeing any sort of differences or similarities. And of course, the intersection with women. What you're seeing and how, like, their questions, what does that show you, and what they believe about the profession, and does that tell you on where the profession needs to evolve? Because obviously it's continuing to move.
There's a lot in that one.
There is. This is a very loaded question, so pick where you want to go.
Oh, look, we've only got so much time together, but I am across. I speak with multiple people daily across multiple platforms in their native space. They like to DM. They don't want to call. They'll do a web call and they'll have a conversation in person, but they are most comfortable yapping back and forth. Voice notes they don't even like. So it's not a problem.
Wow.
But you go where people are, and you meet people where they're at, and that's where they are. And we have to take into consideration the COVID factor for this generation, that they really just absorbed the world and learning through these screens. And when we talk about the Gen Z stare, it's because of the screens. When I go on campus for my law school tour, and they're there and they're listening and they're taking it in, but they are staring at me blankly because they're engaging with me as if I was through a screen. And it's such a fascinating phenomenon, and it's happening every time I go. There'll be like a sense that they're bored and that they're not engaged. It's the opposite. I get the emails and the DMs after, it blew their minds, no one's ever said this, and whatever. But you couldn't tell in the moment because I think we were perhaps taught and socialized to give the verbal cues as nodding, listening, taking notes, a look when you're engaging with someone. They don't do that. By and large, they do not do that. They'll sit there.
Yeah. Because the cues are different online, right?
They are. So we've got to cut them some slack for that, because that's what the Gen Z stare is. But they are deeply curious and they are deeply interested, but they're not going to show you that. So don't write them off as rude necessarily, is my first kind of takeaway. And then, my gosh, like they're still getting the same messaging because the law firms are still incentivized to come on campus and advertise to them directly, and they've got big money and they pay for the law balls and the cocktail nights and they have the fancy events, and there's no one else that can quite come on and sway the Law Student Association or the faculty to have access to that cohort like the big firms can. Except for me, I saw the opportunity and I just couldn't not have a crack at creating a law school, what I've called Caribbean Sis on tour. No one called me and said, "Hey, we want to take you on tour." There's no production company.
You had to create this. You had to build
this. Is just me and my idea in the shower and creating a poster on Canva, and then hiring a project assistant who is a law student out of my own pocket, and getting her to help me reach out to the 46 law schools in the country and to build a plan. We've been to, what have we done? 13 so far. We've got one more for the online students this week. We've got the semester gap, and then we'll kick off the back end of the year. I'll be going to New South Wales, Wollongong, Sydney Uni, back up to Queensland, and a few other bits and pieces. Then we'll go into it next year. I want to get to WA. There's 5 law schools there, and I want to catch them all. Adelaide, there's a merger of schools down there. I want to go there. There's Charles Darwin in the Northern Territory. My hometown of Townsville has JCU, and there's campuses in Cairns, and there's Rockhampton. There's everywhere. I want to go to them all, but I also don't want to burn out again. So we will get there, but it is just me purely trying to be just another voice in what is this constant parade of come and be a big law lawyer in a commercial setting at one of 6 firms. This is how you do it. You want to get a clerkship. The tournament begins. If you don't get a clerkship, you are a failure before you've even begun. By the way, the clerkships are very competitive. By the way, we're not going to really tell you what we're looking for. We're going to imply that it's a high performance, a high achieving, that you're probably going to have pretty decent GPA. But what is that? Is it 6.5 on a 7-point scale? Is it 6? Is it 5.5? Is it 5.7? Do you weight it differently for different law schools? What about extracurriculars? What about different language skills? What about you're looking for double degree? This is the detail and the minutiae that they want from the firms, because they're anxious and they're concerned and they're uncertain, and they don't get it. And no matter how much I continue to be loud about it in all the ways that I can, they don't care. They enjoy the lack of transparency, because they're able to make decisions based on all kinds of factors, the types of people that they've hired before, the types of law schools, the types of high schools that they've hired from before. And, that is what it is. I think we're ripe for some transparency in the process, and it would help with the health outcomes and the wellness outcomes of the younger ones, because they do genuinely get very distraught. It's very upsetting. Look, am I attracting a certain type of student that feels more comfortable to bare their soul? Yeah, sure, potentially. Am I getting old mate, something the third, whose father is a barrister and uncle is a judge? No, I don't think those students are selecting into my content necessarily. Maybe they are, but I don't hear from them. I mainly hear from younger women who are first in family, and also from migrant families. They've come, their family have come here. They've maybe born in Australia, but their family, weren't. They've come to Australia to increase opportunities for their children. There's a lot of young women who are from Vietnamese families, from Southeast Asia families, like all over the world, South African as well. They don't have anyone in the network. They don't understand how it all works here in the legacy plays and the firms and who's who. They have a sense that there's nepotism at play, but they can't quite pinpoint it. And there's soft signals, of course, that there are those kind of backdoor dealings that get done because of who you know. And I came up against all of that as well. I just had a little more, I had some more privilege on my side in different factors, but I looked maybe more of the part, and I had a surname that was the same as someone quite well known here in Brisbane in the legal profession by sheer luck, unrelated to me, but people assumed that was my uncle or my grandfather, and it's bizarre how these things work. But did I trade on that? I don't know, maybe. But I certainly didn't realize that those conversations can affect how people might see you and perceive you. I'm not saying this is right, but it is what happens. So a lot of these conversations are still happening, and the biggest shift that law firms could do would be to be transparent about what they're hiring for. I think that the automated decision-making process that goes into the application system needs to be far more transparent as well.
Yeah, it's a failure of leadership to think that the communication of like the decision is the signal that people need and want, when in reality it is the rationale, the why. And I know it's really trite at this point. Like Simon Sinek said it like how long ago now? 15 years ago, about, it's about the why, but it really is. And that's what, like, just thinking about my own career in law, and where, I did feel that, and I did feel as if I suffered through, not getting into the clerkships, not understanding why. Why does CV Mail have to be the ninth circle of hell? And then, like, I honestly think that's part of the filtering as well. It's like, can you navigate these really old, terrible systems that
the drudgery
overcomplicate simpler things?
That's a fair point. Because if you can, you'll be right at home.
Potentially. Oh boy, was I in for a reckoning when I finally landed a graduate job. But it's like, it's just moving paper around. But why do we move this paper over to that paper? Oh, that's just the way that it's done. And it, like,
this generation won't accept that. And
they
will walk far more. They will talk with their feet, because the loyalty contract is broken. Our generation was the last to experience it in the millennials. We thought that if you stay and you put in the time, you will be rewarded. I don't think that's played out for most of us. We've seen the multiple rounds of redundancies, the multiple rounds of restructuring. I've personally, I've seen it, and I've been part of facilitating it because I was in-house, of course, legal within the technology industry. It was like clockwork within 18 months. Scale up, scale down, scale up, scale down. And it's, it's legal technically, but it's very disruptive to culture. And this generation have seen their parents go through that. And they've said, why would I assume that this corporate entity, this law firm is going to look after me? Yeah. Because it probably won't. They've seen the transaction and they're going in eyes wide open. I think it's a good thing. I think that you and I were disillusioned, and we were the last generation to kind of be swindled somewhat, because when the Wizard of Oz reveals itself, the window is pulled back and you see the Mechanical Turk. It's so disappointing. The grief that you feel, it's so sad. And you feel for your younger self who believed in the myth that was sold, some of the fairy tale, but we didn't know what we didn't know. And now it's a part of why I speak so candidly and openly, because we do no one any favors by trying to sugarcoat it, and we have to let them know they're smart anyway. They already suspect that it's a transaction. What's in it for them? What's in it for the firm? Right, this is a good match. Let's work together. Let's do this good work until it's not, and then I'll move on. And I don't think that this is just the way it's always been done. Is they're not going to put up with that the way that we did, and nor should they.
Yeah, and it's just fantastic. And when I said, like, then they're not buying into the lip service, because
I don't think so.
Exactly what you said. They've seen it. These kids are clever. And what's really reassuring though is that it sounds like they still have hope. They just see the world differently, and that is fantastic. Potentially, we've got a lot to learn. Now, to wrap up, I've got these conversation cards, and they're really cute because they showcase like a little bit of, a different angle. We talk about the expanding legal universe in here, but what is most important is the people that are in legal. And so, Mel, completely candid question. Sorry, I'm terrible at shuffling. I actually think I got the wrong pile. This one. La, la, la. Shuffle, shuffle. Hopefully, if you're watching this, you can see my terrible shuffling. Anyway.
She's doing great.
Oh, this is a lovely magic one. And if you would like, I can also share my response to this. Describe the last time you felt really embarrassed.
Every day. I make it a personal mission of mine to show up online and pay my cringe tax with my content. If I don't feel cringe, which I guess is akin to embarrassed, I'm not pushing myself to be as visible as I need to be to make the impact that I want to have. So every day. Babe, before we went live, I just did a reel on Instagram where I showed off this new top that just arrived, and I actually wasn't wearing a bra underneath. And so I was covering my front like this so you couldn't see that I wasn't wearing a bra. I've put that live already. That's already on the internet. Now that is so cringe. But I wanted to be really real and authentic about, hey, I just got back. I picked up my package. I've got my coffee. Let's try it on. Cut. I go off camera. I put it back on. I think, oh gosh, I haven't really got a bra. Should I? Oh, I've got no time. I'm on with Chantal in a bit. So let's go. Boom. I go like this. You'll be able to see it. You can overlay it right now. And I guess I guess that's embarrassing. But my bar for embarrassment is pretty high these days, and I push myself to feel that.
Thanks so much for coming onto the show, Mel, and sharing your experiences and what you're doing. And I'm really looking forward to following you on your Career Big Sis on tour throughout all the universities and law schools in Australia.
Thank you for having me. This has been so delightful.
You've been listening to the Law and Beyond show on the People in Legal podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing so you have notifications and it helps our audience find us. You can also find us on LinkedIn at People in Legal, and consider following me, Chantal McNaught, on LinkedIn to get your copy of the fully innovative luxury lawyer newsletter. And see you in the next episode.